My daughter woke up crying in the middle of the night. After I got her back to sleep, I suddenly realized my husband wasn't beside me. I went downstairs looking for him as a feeling of unease washed over me. Outside, my husband and mother-in-law were talking. It was a conversation that made me sick to my stomach. My heart shattered. After everything I had sacrificed for this family, I couldn't believe they had been planning this for me from the very beginning. My phone suddenly started vibrating so hard on the table that it nearly fell to the floor. I quickly dropped the shirt I had been washing by hand, my fingers still covered in soap suds. After rinsing my hands in a hurry, I rushed inside and answered the call. "Hello? Monica, where are you?" It was Tasha, my best friend. Her voice sounded urgent. "At home. Why? What happened?" "Get dressed and come here right now. I'm sending you the address." I frowned. "But what's going on? I'm still washing clothes." Tasha let out a frustrated sigh. "Are you serious right now? If you don't get over here immediately, you're going to lose a lot more than a pile of laundry. Stop playing housekeeper for people who don't appreciate you and get over here." Before I could ask another question, she hung up. I stared at my phone in confusion. Tasha was never this dramatic. Whatever had happened, it had to be important. So I left the laundry unfinished and hurried upstairs to change. When I came downstairs, my mother-in-law, Patricia Coleman, was sitting in front of the television with a satisfied smile on her face. My father-in-law wasn't around. He was probably out spending time with his friends like he usually did. The moment Patricia saw me dressed and heading toward the door, her smile disappeared. "Where do you think you're going?" she asked sharply. "I need to go out for a little while. I'll finish everything when I get back," I replied politely. As I headed outside, her voice followed me. "You'd better be back in time to cook lunch. It's almost noon, running off again when the housework isn't even finished. Every chance you get, you try to avoid your responsibilities." I didn't answer. There was no point. Comments like that had become part of my daily life. Sometimes staying quiet was the easiest way to keep the peace. So I got into my car and drove away, still wondering why Tasha had sounded so desperate. I drove straight to the address Tasha had sent me. It was a beautiful coffee lounge with a garden courtyard and a koi pond, but I barely noticed any of it. My eyes were busy searching for my best friend. As I walked inside, I called her. She answered immediately. "Go up to the second floor. I'm waiting for you." I followed her directions and found her standing near the staircase. The moment she saw me, she hurried over. "Before you see this, you need to stay calm," she said nervously. "I know this is going to be hard, but you deserve to know the truth." My stomach tightened. Whatever was happening, it couldn't be good. Tasha guided me toward a table hidden behind a row of decorative plants. Then she pointed. At a nearby table sat a man and a woman. The woman was leaning comfortably against the man's shoulder, smiling as if they were a happy couple. At first, I only thought the man looked familiar. Then I noticed the shirt he was wearing, the watch on his wrist, the shoes beneath the table. My heart stopped. It was Derek, my husband. I froze. Right there in front of everyone. He had his arms around another woman. His wedding ring still glimmered on his finger, yet he looked completely comfortable holding someone who wasn't his wife. My hands began to tremble. I couldn't breathe. It felt as if someone had wrapped their fingers around my heart and squeezed. Derek and I had been married for 2 years. We had a baby girl named Ava who wasn't even a year old yet. Before marriage, we had spent a year building a future together. I had trusted him enough to build my entire life around him. Yet here he was, openly embracing another woman. And judging by how comfortable they looked together, this wasn't new. This had been going on for a long time. Tasha grabbed my hand and gently pulled me away before I completely fell apart. I followed her like a ghost. My mind could no longer process anything except the image of Derek and that woman together. She drove me to a lake nearby and parked beside the water. The moment we stopped, the tears came. I broke down completely. My marriage, the marriage I had believed was happy, wasn't even 2 years old. This should have been the most beautiful chapter of our lives. We had already spent a year together before getting married. We had shared dreams, struggles, and plans for the future. We had a daughter together. Yet somehow, before our baby had even turned 1 year old, my husband had found someone else. The more I thought about it, the harder I cried. People passing by glanced at me with sympathy, but I didn't care. My family was falling apart. What did anything else matter? Tasha waited quietly until my sobs finally slowed. "I know this hurts," she said softly, "but it's better to know now than spend the rest of your life being lied to while you keep sacrificing everything for that family." Through my tears, I looked at her helplessly. "What am I supposed to do now, Tasha? I never thought Derek could do this to me. Maybe he's disappointed in me after having a baby. Maybe I'm not attractive anymore. Maybe because I stay home and don't earn money, he thinks I'm a burden. Tasha immediately grabbed my shoulders and looked me straight in the eyes. Stop blaming yourself, Monica. You did nothing wrong. You've done more than enough. You're a good wife, a good mother, and you've sacrificed everything for that family. The problem isn't you. The problem is Derek. He's the one who chose to betray you. Hearing those words only made me cry harder. When the storm of emotions finally settled, another fear began creeping into my mind. Divorce. The word wouldn't leave me alone. But how could I leave? Ava wasn't even a year old. If I divorced Derek, the court would most likely grant me custody. But what kind of life could I give her? She would grow up without a father. Would she resent me someday? Then there was the financial reality. I had no income of my own. Since Ava was born, I had stayed home full-time. The house we lived in belonged to Derek's parents, not us. There was no property to divide. Even if child support was awarded, I knew Patricia would do everything she could to make my life difficult. I couldn't bring myself to run back to my parents either. They had worked hard their entire lives just to put me through school. Their small convenience store barely earned enough to support themselves. How could I become their burden after all these years? But staying with a man who had betrayed me felt impossible. I was trapped between two painful choices, and neither one seemed survivable. Tasha sighed beside me. After everything you've done for that family, you'd have to walk away with nothing. That's so unfair. I stared across the water. Maybe when you've lived with unfairness for long enough, you stop expecting justice. Maybe I had spent so many years accepting less than I deserved that I no longer knew how to fight for myself. I had no idea how I was supposed to face my husband that night, but I had nowhere else to go. Tasha had her own family, and even if she let me stay for one night, I couldn't live there forever. So I went home. Tasha drove me all the way back because she was worried I might do something reckless, but I knew I couldn't fall apart. I still had Ava. I still had my parents. No matter what happened, I had to keep going for them. When I walked through the front door, Patricia was still sitting in front of the television. She didn't care what kind of condition I was in. The moment she saw me, she started yelling. "Where have you been all day? Do you know what time it is? Were you planning to let two old people starve?" I barely had the strength to answer. I greeted her politely and went upstairs. "Make sure you come down and cook," she shouted after me. "There are only a few things for you to do in this house, and you still can't do them properly." The moment I closed the bedroom door, the images from the coffee shop came rushing back. I collapsed onto the bed and burst into tears. The room that once felt full of happiness now felt filled with lies and betrayal. The wedding photo hanging above the bed looked like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. Eventually, I wiped away my tears and went downstairs because the house still expected me to function as if nothing had happened. While I cooked, Patricia wandered into the kitchen and began criticizing everything as usual. She lifted lids, examined pots, and found fault with every dish. I barely listened. Her voice blended into memories that I had spent years trying to ignore. From the very beginning, Patricia had never wanted me in Derek's life. She believed I was a small-town girl trying to climb above my station by marrying her son. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, I was never good enough. When I became pregnant, she seemed excited for a while. She encouraged Derek to take care of me and buy me healthy food. For a brief moment, I thought things were finally changing. Then we learned the baby was a girl. Everything changed overnight. Patricia called me useless. She said I couldn't even give the family a grandson. She treated the birth of my daughter as if it were some kind of personal failure. After Ava was born, I wanted to return to work, but Patricia refused to help with childcare, so I stayed home. Month after month, I cooked, cleaned, washed clothes, and cared for everyone. I gave up my career, my independence, and years of my life for this family. Yet somehow it was never enough. "Is this supposed to be dinner?" Patricia snapped, pulling me back to reality. Normally I would have stayed quiet, but something inside me had changed. "I'm still cooking," I replied firmly. "Please wait outside. I'll let you know when everything is ready." Patricia stared at me in shock. She wasn't used to hearing me speak back. For years I had been the obedient daughter-in-law who never complained, but not anymore. Later that evening, Derek came home exactly on time. The same shirt, the same watch, the same shoes, the same man I had seen holding another woman, only hours earlier. Watching him walk through the front door and act like the perfect husband made my chest ache. During dinner, I kept my head down so no one would see the tears gathering in my eyes. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I lay awake staring at Derek sleeping beside me. and Ava sleeping in her crib. My mind raced endlessly. Should I confront him? Should I give him a chance to explain? Was any of this somehow my fault? Maybe I had stopped taking care of myself. Maybe staying home had made him look down on me. But every time those thoughts appeared, another voice reminded me of the truth. I had sacrificed my youth, my career, and my happiness for this family. I had done nothing wrong. Still, if I left, I would have nothing. No house, no savings, no security. I would be walking away with only my daughter in my arms. And I couldn't accept that. I still loved my husband. I thought about it all night. I didn't want to keep living like this anymore. I texted Tasha. She understood how I felt. The next morning, I woke up after a short, restless sleep. Derek was still asleep beside me. It really is true that cruel people live comfortably. The one who betrayed me could sleep soundly, while I, the one who had been hurt, couldn't sleep at all. I decided not to get up. I just stayed in bed. I was not going to be a servant for that family anymore. I had to live for myself and for my daughter. At 6:30, Derek woke up when his alarm went off. Seeing that I was still lying there scrolling on my phone, he asked, "You're not getting up to go shopping? Mom will be upstairs soon." I turned toward Ava, who was still sleeping, and calmly replied, "I'm tired today. I'm not going shopping. Tell your parents to go out and get something to eat." Derek stared at me. "What do you mean? Do you not understand English?" I said, "I'm not doing it. Go tell your parents to eat out." He froze for a few seconds, obviously shocked by my attitude. Then he softened his voice. "Are you sick? Do you need to see a doctor?" I almost laughed. So now my husband knew how to worry about me. I remembered when Ava was 3 months old and both of us got sick. I begged him to take us to the doctor, but he said he was busy. He told me to ask Patricia instead. Patricia claimed she was too old and couldn't take us. In the end, I had to call a taxi and borrow money from Tasha just to go to the clinic. Luckily, it was only a minor illness. If it had been serious, I didn't know who would have taken care of us. That night, Derek barely asked how we were before going back to his phone, and now he was asking if I needed a doctor. Before, those words might have made me cry with gratitude, but after everything I had seen yesterday, his concern only made me feel sick. "Just go to work," I told him. "I can take care of myself." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but he stopped. A few moments later, loud banging echoed through the bedroom door. I knew exactly who it was. "Monica, are you still in bed? What kind of daughter-in-law are you?" Patricia shouted. "The sun is practically overhead and you still haven't gotten up." The banging continued. I called out to Derek, who was brushing his teeth in the bathroom. "Go open the door and tell your mother I'm sick." Derek quickly opened the door. "Mom, Monica isn't feeling well today. Can you and Dad go get breakfast outside?" Patricia looked past him and saw me lying in bed. She stormed into the room. "Sick? She's not sick. She's just lazy." Then she yanked the blanket off me. "Get up, go shopping, cook breakfast." This house doesn't need a daughter-in-law who lives off other people and refuses to work. Her shouting startled Ava awake. My daughter immediately started crying. I picked her up and tried to calm her down. Patricia pointed at me. "See? She's perfectly fine. Only a fool would believe she's sick." Then she turned back to me. "Get up and go buy breakfast. Your father-in-law is hungry and Derek has to go to work." I looked at her and said, "I already told you. I'm tired today. I can't go. Can't you and Dad get breakfast yourselves? Tired? You're pretending because you're lazy," Patricia shouted. Ava cried even harder. Holding my daughter, I turned to Derek. "Derek, take your parents out for breakfast." Derek finally spoke. "Mom, I'll take you and Dad." Patricia ignored him. "Stay out of this. I'm teaching her a lesson." She stepped closer and glared at me. "Who gave you the right to order my son around? You've done nothing for this family. You're living off my son. You're living off all of us. You think giving birth to a daughter is some great achievement? You've become far too bold." Then she lunged at me. Because I was holding Ava, I couldn't defend myself. She tried to hit me again, but Derek grabbed her before she could reach me. "Mom, please stop," he begged. "It's only breakfast." "I'll take you and Dad out." Patricia struggled wildly. "Let me go. I'm going to teach her a lesson." Derek dragged her downstairs while she continued screaming. The noise continued for a while before I finally heard a car leave the driveway. Ava cried for a few more minutes before she calmed down. The house became quiet again. I let out a long breath. This was only the beginning. That day, I didn't do any housework like I normally did. After dropping Ava off at daycare, I stayed in my room and tried to figure out how I could avoid walking away with nothing if I got divorced. Even if I wanted a divorce, I would still need money to hire a lawyer. The problem was, Where would I get that money? I didn't work. Ever since Ava was born, Patricia had taken complete control of Derek's paycheck. Every day, she left a small amount of grocery money on the TV stand for me to use. In times like these, there was rarely anything left over. Sometimes she even demanded the change back. Looking back on it, I honestly didn't understand how I had endured that life for so long. While I was sitting there thinking, my phone suddenly rang. It was my father. I couldn't even remember the last time I had called my parents. "Monica, are you busy?" he asked carefully. "No, Dad. What's wrong?" "I wanted to tell you something. You remember that piece of family land we own outside town? The one nobody has used for years? A development company wants to buy it. They're planning a commercial project, and the compensation is very high." I was surprised when I heard that. I was happy for my parents. They would finally have some financial security for their retirement. "Really, Dad? Then you should sell it. That land hasn't been doing anything for years anyway. At least this way you'll have money set aside for yourselves." "That's what I'm thinking too," he replied. "It's a good amount of money. Your mother and I want to give part of it to you and Derek. When you have time, bring him home and we'll talk about it properly." I lowered my head. What marriage? There was barely a marriage left, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him what had happened. Instead, I said, "We're doing fine, Dad. You and Mom should keep the money for yourselves." My father laughed softly. "If we don't leave it for our children, who are we supposed to leave it for?" I smiled bitterly and changed the subject. "How are you and Mom doing?" "We're fine." "When you have time, bring Ava to visit us. We miss her." "I will, Dad." After talking for a little longer, we hung up. I was 26 years old and still hadn't done anything meaningful for my parents. All I had ever done was make them worry about me. I really was an ungrateful daughter. I called Tasha. Then I opened the paper box where I had hidden the money I saved back when I still had a job. I had always kept it there in case I ever got sick or life suddenly went wrong. And wasn't this exactly the kind of moment I had been saving it for? I took out my favorite turquoise dress, one I hadn't worn in a very long time because I never had anywhere to go. I put on a little makeup, got dressed, and headed downstairs. Patricia was sitting in front of the television. The moment she saw me dressed differently than usual, she sneered. "This morning you claimed you were sick and couldn't do any housework. Now look at you, all dressed up and going out. So much for being sick." I didn't answer. I walked straight outside. A taxi had just arrived. What surprised me was that Patricia only made a few comments and didn't try to stop me. With her personality, I expected another argument, but this time she simply let me leave. I found it strange. Had Derek really managed to calm her down? I brought that question with me when I met Tasha. When I met Tasha, she immediately stared at me in surprise. "Wow, look at you. You finally remembered you're actually beautiful." I laughed bitterly and sat down across from her. "Stop making fun of me. I'm serious," she replied. "You've spent the last 2 years taking care of Derek's family. You've completely forgotten about yourself." We ordered lunch and talked for a while. Tasha listened quietly as I told her about everything that had happened since yesterday. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. "So what are you going to do?" I looked down at the table. "I don't know. Have you thought about talking to Derek?" I was silent for a moment. "What's the point?" "I already saw everything with my own eyes." "Maybe. But before you make any decisions, you should hear what he has to say." I knew she had a point. No matter what happened afterward, I deserved an explanation. That evening, after Derek came home from work, I waited until Ava was asleep before calling him into the bedroom. The moment he walked in and saw the expression on my face, he seemed nervous. "What's wrong?" he asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened the photograph Tasha had taken at the coffee lounge. Then I handed it to him. Derek looked at the screen. His face immediately went pale. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked, "Who is she?" Derek swallowed hard. "Monica. Who is she?" I repeated. My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking. He lowered his head. "Her name is Jasmine." I laughed bitterly. "So you know her well enough to say her name without even thinking." Derek rubbed his face and sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry." Tears filled my eyes. "Sorry? Is that all you have to say?" He looked at me helplessly. "I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I stared at him. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is missing a phone call. You had another woman in your arms while your wife was at home taking care of your daughter." "Don't call that a mistake." Derek covered his face with both hands. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he finally admitted everything. He told me he had met Jasmine a few months earlier. He claimed it had started as friendship and gradually became something else. He swore he never intended for it to happen. He swore he still loved me. He swore he loved Ava. I listened to every word without interrupting. When he finished, he suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me. Please forgive me, Monica. I know I don't deserve it, but please give me one more chance. I swear I'll end everything with Jasmine. I'll never see her again. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't leave me. I looked down at him. The man I had loved for years was kneeling in front of me, begging. I thought about Ava sleeping in the next room. I thought about growing up without a father. I thought about all the years we had spent together. Tears rolled down my cheeks. This is your last chance, Derek, I whispered. If I ever find out you're lying to me again, we're done. Derek immediately grabbed my hands. I promise, I swear. After that night, he really did seem to change. He started helping with the housework. He took Ava to daycare. He even cooked a few meals. Patricia hated every second of it. She complained constantly, but Derek ignored her. Little by little, I started believing that maybe our family could still be saved. Maybe people really could make mistakes and change. Maybe giving him another chance had been the right decision. I wanted to believe that. More than anything, I wanted to believe that. For a while, everything seemed peaceful again. Derek left for work on time every morning and came home at the usual hour every evening. He paid more attention to me than he had in years. He helped take care of Ava, helped with housework, and stayed beside me instead of spending all his time on his phone. Sometimes he even brought home food that I liked. Seeing him change made me feel happy. I thought maybe he had truly ended things with Jasmine. I thought maybe he had finally realized that his real family was here with me and Ava. Even Patricia became angrier than usual because of the way Derek treated me. Every time she saw him helping me wash dishes or fold laundry, she complained endlessly. "What's wrong with you?" she would snap at him. "Why are you doing housework? That's her job." Derek would simply answer, "She's tired. I'm helping my wife." Patricia hated hearing that. She believed a husband should never help his wife with household chores. The more Derek cared about me, the more irritated she became. But I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my marriage still had a chance. I felt like all the sacrifices I had made might finally be worth something. I wanted to believe that the nightmare was over. I wanted to believe that our family was healing. Unfortunately, I was wrong. One afternoon, after dropping Ava off at daycare, I went grocery shopping like usual. On my way back, I stopped at a shopping plaza to buy a few things. I never expected that decision to change everything. As I walked past a restaurant, a familiar voice made me stop. I turned around and immediately froze. Derek was sitting inside near the window. Across from him sat Jasmine. For a moment, I thought I was mistaken. I thought maybe there was some explanation. But then I saw Jasmine reach across the table and place her hand over his. Derek didn't pull away. My heart sank. It felt exactly like the day I had seen them together at the coffee lounge. The same pain, the same betrayal, the same feeling of being made a fool. I stood there staring through the glass. They looked comfortable together, familiar, as if nothing had ended at all, as if all those promises Derek had made to me meant absolutely nothing. Then Jasmine smiled and gently rubbed her stomach. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw Derek's expression change. A few seconds later, both of them stood up and walked outside. I quickly stepped behind a nearby pillar before they could see me. My hands were trembling. My entire body felt cold. Then I heard Jasmine's voice. "I'm pregnant." Everything around me seemed to stop. "It's a boy," she continued. The doctor confirmed it this morning. I felt as though the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. A boy. The one thing Patricia had always wanted. The one thing she constantly blamed me for not giving the family. I waited for Derek to deny it. I waited for him to say something. Instead, I heard him ask quietly, "Are you sure?" Jasmine laughed softly. "Of course I'm sure." My vision blurred. The man who had knelt in front of me and begged for forgiveness was still seeing his mistress. And now, she was carrying his child. At that moment, I realized I had been a complete fool for believing him. I don't remember how long I stood there. By the time Derek and Jasmine left, I felt completely numb. Somehow, I managed to get back home. That night, I acted as if nothing had happened. I cooked dinner. I fed Ava. I listened to Patricia complain about everything as usual. When Derek came home, he even brought my favorite food. "I saw this on the way home and thought of you," he said with a smile. I stared at the food in silence. A few hours earlier, he had been sitting with his mistress and listening to the news that she was pregnant. Now he was standing in front of me pretending to be a loving husband. The hypocrisy made me sick. During dinner, Patricia kept praising Derek. See? That's how a husband should treat his wife. Maybe now you'll finally learn how lucky you are. I almost laughed. If only she knew where her precious son had been that afternoon. Later that night, after Patricia went to bed, I heard voices downstairs. I had gone to get a glass of water when I realized Derek and Patricia were talking in the living room. Something in their tone made me stop. I stayed where I was and listened. Are you sure? Patricia asked quietly. Yes, Derek replied. Jasmine is pregnant. There was a brief silence. Then Patricia spoke again. And it's a boy? That's what she said. To my shock, Patricia sounded pleased. Very pleased, finally. A grandson. My hand tightened around the staircase railing. What about Monica? Derek asked. What about her? Patricia replied immediately. She only gave you a daughter. You already gave her another chance. If Jasmine can give you a son, then you need to think about your future. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe, but Patricia wasn't finished. Besides, Monica's family is about to receive money from that land development deal, aren't they? Derek didn't answer right away. Yes. Patricia lowered her voice even more. Then don't do anything stupid. Keep Monica happy for now. Once that money comes, we'll figure everything else out. I felt as though someone had poured ice water over my entire body. Suddenly, everything made sense. Derek's apologies, his attention, his kindness, his sudden transformation. It wasn't because he loved me. It wasn't because he regretted betraying me. It was because my family was about to receive money. I stood there in complete silence while the truth destroyed the last piece of hope I still had. Everything had been a lie. That day, I was coming home from grocery shopping like usual. As I got close to the house, I vaguely noticed two people arguing in the alley next to ours. I was in a hurry to get home, so I didn't pay much attention at first. But then I heard a familiar voice, and curiosity made me stop and look more carefully. Please, just go home first. If there's anything else, I'll come see you later. I froze. Wasn't that Derek's voice? I moved closer. The familiar figure gradually came into view and left me completely stunned. It was Derek. He was holding another woman's hand. The tattoo on her shoulder immediately made me recognize her. She was the same woman Derek had been embracing at the coffee lounge that day. When she heard what Derek said, she shouted, "I'm not leaving. If we don't settle this today, I'm not going anywhere." Derek pleaded desperately. "Please, my wife will be home soon. If she sees us, neither of us will have any peace. Why are you afraid of her? She's just some country girl. What can she do to me? Let's make everything public today. Haven't you wanted to divorce her for a long time? Please, just go home." The two of them continued struggling back and forth. One wanted to go inside. The other wanted to send her away. I stood there watching them, my heart breaking apart. I had thought Derek had truly come back. I had thought our home could be happy again. I had thought my daughter still had a father and I still had a husband. I thought everything could return to the way it used to be. But the cruel reality in front of me was like a slap across my face. It woke me from a dream. Those moments of happiness had been nothing more than foam on the surface of the ocean. One gust of wind and they disappeared without a trace. If I still had hope at this point, then I was the biggest fool in the world. I forced myself to suppress the anger that made my hands tremble. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward and said, "There's no need to argue anymore. Come inside." Only then did Derek and the woman realize I was there. They immediately let go of each other and looked completely flustered. I repeated myself, "Come inside. The neighbors are watching." After saying that, I picked up my groceries and walked straight into the house. Patricia saw me come in and immediately started complaining like usual. "You only went grocery shopping. Why did it take so long?" I didn't answer. I didn't even look at her. I walked straight inside. Patricia snorted. "This daughter-in-law gets more arrogant every day. And just because my son defends her, she thinks she can walk all over me now." Before she could continue, Derek and the other woman walked in. Patricia frowned. "Derek, who's this?" The woman immediately ran over and greeted her enthusiastically. Patricia ignored her and asked Derek again, "Who is she? Why is she here?" Derek didn't answer. He walked straight inside. The woman followed Patricia into the house anyway. I placed the groceries on the kitchen table and walked into the living room. I sat down and waited. I reminded myself that I had to stay strong because there was no one left I could rely on. Derek sat down quietly. Patricia and the woman followed. Now that I could finally look at her properly, I had to admit she was younger and more attractive than me. No wonder she had managed to seduce a married man. But the smug look on her face also made it obvious that she wasn't very bright. I looked at Derek. He looked like a dog that had been caught stealing food. His expression couldn't have been more miserable. Patricia looked back and forth between us. "What's going on?" she asked. I calmly replied, "Mom, today I'm going to tell you the truth so you won't have to keep wondering anymore. You've been wondering why Derek has been acting so well lately, right? I'll tell you why. He did something wrong to me. I forgave him. But he went right back to his old habits. Let me introduce you. This is Derek's mistress." Patricia stared at me. Derek lowered his head. Only the woman remained arrogant. She crossed her arms and said, "I have a name. You don't need to introduce me like that." Then she turned to Patricia. "My name is Jasmine. I'm Derek's girlfriend." Patricia stared at her and then at her son. "Derek, is that true?" Derek kept his head down and said nothing. But Jasmine had no such hesitation. She acted proud of herself. I couldn't understand how someone could stand in another woman's house, openly announce that she was the other woman, and still look so proud. When she noticed me smiling, she immediately snapped, "What are you laughing at? You think being Derek's legal wife is such a big deal? You're nothing but a name on a marriage certificate." I looked at Derek and laughed coldly. "Maybe, but at least my name is on that marriage certificate? You don't even have that." Jasmine became furious. "What do you know? Derek spends more time with me than he does with you. You're only his wife on paper." Unfortunately, she wasn't completely wrong. I really was only a wife on paper, but I refused to let myself appear weak. I turned to Derek and said, "Derek, tell her. Tell her how you got down on your knees and begged me to forgive you. Why are you still involved with her?" Derek remained silent. Jasmine immediately jumped in. "Why should he be afraid of you? You're just some country girl." She turned toward me and sneered. "You were plain and unfashionable before. After having a baby, you've become even worse. What gives you the right to expect Derek to stay with you?" "Enough!" Derek suddenly shouted. Everyone fell silent. Even Patricia looked startled. Derek turned to Jasmine. "Go home. I'll deal with this later." Jasmine shook her head. "You're trying to send me away again? I'm not leaving. Not until everything is settled. Go home." Derek glared at her. Jasmine flinched but quickly recovered. "If you won't tell her, then I will. The only person I love is my wife." He walked over, took my hand, and said, "Monica, please believe me. I've wanted to end things with her. She just refuses to let go. Please believe me. You're the only woman I want." Looking into Derek's eyes, I truly believed he was being sincere. When Jasmine heard Derek deny their relationship, she exploded. "Derek, what did you just say? Didn't you hear me? The only person I love is my wife. Please go home." Jasmine was furious. Finally, she played her last card. "Derek, I'm pregnant." The words shocked all three of us. Me, Derek, and Patricia. My knees nearly gave out beneath me. She was pregnant with my husband's child. Derek stared at her, then looked at me. "I didn't know. Monica, please believe me. I really didn't know." But by that point, I couldn't stay strong anymore. My legs felt weak. Tears streamed down my face without me even realizing it. The thing I feared most had finally happened. Jasmine understood from my reaction that she had achieved exactly what she wanted. She smirked. "I'm pregnant, 3 months, and it's a boy." Patricia immediately turned toward her. "Really? A boy?" "Yes." Jasmine happily pulled an ultrasound image from her purse and handed it over. "Look, Patricia, the baby's healthy. The doctor said it's going to be a strong, healthy boy." After looking at the ultrasound, Patricia's attitude visibly softened. She turned toward Derek. "Derek, maybe." Derek immediately understood what she was about to say and cut her off. "No, I already have Ava. I only want my wife." Jasmine suddenly burst into tears. She looked completely different from the aggressive woman she had been only moments earlier. "Derek, how can you abandon your own child before he's even born? How can you do that?" But Derek pretended not to care. Derek helped me upstairs, leaving his mistress crying downstairs with Patricia. He helped me into the room, closed the door, and pulled me into his arms. "Don't worry. You're my only wife, and Ava is my only child. I'll make her get rid of the baby. I won't have anything to do with her anymore. I promise." I sat quietly in his arms. I didn't know whether I could still trust the man standing in front of me. Derek told me to get some rest while he went downstairs to deal with everything. Then he left the room. I didn't know what he said, but a little while later he came back upstairs and told me, "She's gone. From now on, no one will bother us anymore." I believed him. I hoped he could really do what he said. In the days that followed, he went back to being a good husband and a good father. After that shock, I constantly felt exhausted. I had no energy to take care of Ava or do any housework, but Derek never complained. He handled everything himself. He fed Ava, took her to daycare, picked her up afterward, and did all the housework. At lunchtime, he even came home to bring me food and encouraged me to get up, eat, and rest. Patricia hated seeing that. She knew what her son had done was wrong, but she believed I was making too much of it. Many times she stormed into my room, yelling at me and accusing me of being lazy, saying that I was pushing all the housework onto her son and forcing him to earn money and take care of the house at the same time until he was losing weight. Whenever Derek was home, he would immediately defend me. When he was at work, I ignored everything Patricia said. That only made her even angrier. I also wondered whether my husband could really change this much. Until one night. It was already very late. Normally I would have been asleep, but Ava suddenly woke up crying, so I had to get up and comfort her. Derek was nowhere to be found. I assumed he was outside hanging laundry like he usually did. After Ava fell asleep again, he still hadn't come back to the room. I was curious, and I was thirsty, so I went downstairs. As I passed through the living room, I heard voices coming from outside through the window. It was Patricia and Derek. What were they doing outside this late at night? Curious, I quietly walked over to the window and listened. Have you lost your mind? It's just an affair. You've already cut things off, but she's still making a huge deal out of it and forcing you to do everything. It breaks my heart seeing how skinny you've gotten. Don't worry, Mom. Everything I do has a purpose. Your son isn't stupid. What are you planning now? What does she even have that's worth putting up with all this for? She's ugly. She's country. She's a freeloader. If it were me, I'd throw her out and marry your mistress instead. She's prettier and she's carrying your son. You don't know this, Mom. My father-in-law just got compensation for a huge piece of land back home. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. Tens of millions? Yes. They only have Monica and her aunt. They'll definitely split it between the two families. Then Monica's share must still be worth millions. Exactly. That's why I have to put up with all of this. So stop giving Monica a hard time, or you'll ruin my plans. Fine, I understand. But what about your mistress? Are you really making her get rid of the baby? What are you talking about? That's my son. Why would I get rid of him? After I get the money, I'll throw that ugly country woman out of the house and bring my son home. You're too smart, son. The other day you just whispered a few words to your mistress and she went home immediately. My son really is clever. Once I get the money and the son, all this suffering will be worth it. Then the two of them laughed quietly together. I listened to every word and stood there frozen, so I was still the fool. He had tricked me again and again. I dragged myself back upstairs and collapsed onto the bed. I didn't know how Derek had found out about my father's land. I didn't think my father would have told him, but if Derek already knew, then he must have been planning this for a very long time. The only fool was me. He had cheated on me twice, and I still believed he truly loved me. If I hadn't overheard this conversation tonight, I probably would have continued believing every word he said. I would have continued living that life, letting him take care of me, loving him unconditionally. But unfortunately, I had heard everything. If I continued being weak and let him use me after this, then I would truly be the stupidest woman in the world. I had to make him pay for every lie and every way he had used me. After that day, I started planning my revenge. If he wanted to use his care and attentiveness to take advantage of me, then I would use that same care and attentiveness against him. As usual, that morning he asked me what I wanted to eat. Normally, I would say anything was fine, but today I pretended to say absent-mindedly, "I'm really craving seafood." Derek immediately asked, "Huh? What did you say?" I quickly acted as if I had just realized what I said. "No, nothing. I said anything is fine." "Okay," Derek replied and quietly went out. But I knew he had heard me. Sure enough, when he came home from work that evening, he was carrying a large tray of fresh seafood. Patricia looked surprised. "Why are we eating so well today? It's not payday yet. Did something good happen?" "No. My wife wanted seafood, so I bought some," Derek replied with a smile. Patricia curled her lip. "A freeloader who still makes demands." Derek quickly stopped her. "Mom, what are you saying?" Patricia snorted at me and walked away. I didn't care. I turned to Derek and said, "I don't know how to cook this. You cook it. I'm taking Ava upstairs to change clothes." Derek happily replied, "Okay, leave it to me." I calmly went upstairs, secretly thinking that my husband didn't know how to cook anything. At most, he would just steam everything. Sure enough, when I came back downstairs, a huge tray of steamed seafood was already sitting on the table. The house was empty. My father-in-law was probably still out playing chess, and Patricia was still at her dance practice. Derek was outside struggling to fix a water pipe. I knew perfectly well that he had been spoiled since childhood and had no idea how to repair things like that. It would probably take him another hour before he finished. I looked at the steaming tray of seafood and smiled coldly. If I didn't eat now, then when would I? So I sat down and ate the entire tray by myself. When I finished, I left all the shells on the table, covered everything back up, and went upstairs as if nothing had happened. A little while later, Patricia shouted from downstairs, "Oh my God, Monica, get down here right now." Then I heard Derek rush in. "What happened, Mom? Look at this. Can you accept this? Monica, get down here." I knew it was time for me to appear. I pulled the blanket up over Ava and calmly walked downstairs. "What's wrong, Mom?" Patricia pointed at me and started yelling. "You're unbelievable. My son bought that seafood for the whole family, and you ate it all by yourself. What kind of person does that?" I pretended to be confused and walked over to look. The tray now contained nothing but shells. "I didn't eat it. I've been upstairs this whole time. I haven't even come down. You're still denying it? There are only 4 people in this house. Your father-in-law and I just got home. Derek didn't eat it. If it wasn't you, then who was it? A thief? What kind of thief breaks into a house and calmly sits down to eat an entire tray of seafood? How would I know? It's not like I was the only one home. Derek was here too. And if I ate all of that, wouldn't he have noticed? It wasn't a shrimp or two. It was an entire tray of seafood. I deliberately played dumb. Patricia was already convinced it was me, and hearing me talk like that only made her angrier. Derek was outside fixing the water pipe. Of course he didn't know. You must have waited until he went outside and then eaten everything. Isn't that right? I already told you. I didn't eat it. Patricia lost her temper and charged at me, ready to hit me. But Derek quickly stepped in and blocked her. "Mom, what are you doing? Monica already said she didn't eat it. Why do you keep blaming her? What's wrong with you? The truth is right in front of your face and you're still defending her?" Derek stood firm. I trust my wife. Hearing a man stand up and defend his wife like that would have sounded touching to anyone else. But to me, it was funny. I deliberately acted affectionate in front of Patricia just to make her even angrier. "Derek, I didn't eat it. You understand me, right?" Derek immediately played along. "Of course I do. Don't worry." Patricia was furious but couldn't do anything with Derek standing between us. She pointed at her son. "Keep spoiling her. We'll see how long she can keep pretending." Then she stormed off. Derek walked me back upstairs. I knew Patricia was so angry that night she probably didn't even need dinner. The next day, I told Derek that my college class was having a reunion and that I wanted to buy a new dress. In the past, he probably would have found an excuse to refuse. But now things were different. The moment he heard it was a class reunion, he immediately asked, "How much do you need?" I pretended to hesitate. "Forget it. It's probably too expensive. Just tell me. Maybe around $1,000. Derek didn't even think about it. He immediately took out all the cash he had on him and handed it to me. "Take it. If it's not enough, let me know." I looked at the money in my hand and almost laughed. Before, if I wanted to buy anything, I had to think about it for days. Now he was practically throwing money at me. "Thank you," I said softly. Derek smiled. "You don't have to thank me. You're my wife." Wife. The word sounded ridiculous now. That afternoon after he left for work, I took the money upstairs and hid it in the same box where I had kept my savings from before. Every dollar mattered. If I wanted a divorce, if I wanted to hire a lawyer, if I wanted to protect myself and Ava, then I needed money. I couldn't depend on anyone else. Not my parents, not Tasha, and definitely not Derek. Over the next few days, I continued the same routine. Whenever I casually mentioned wanting something, Derek found a way to buy it. Sometimes it was clothes. Sometimes it was cosmetics. Sometimes it was money for things I claimed I needed. Each time, I quietly put more money aside. I knew I couldn't push too hard. If I asked for too much too quickly, Derek would become suspicious. A fish only bites when it thinks the bait is safe. So I continued acting like the same trusting wife he thought he could control. Let him believe everything was going according to his plan. Let him believe I still trusted him completely. The more confident he became, the harder he would fall later. Besides, it had been a long time since I had visited my parents. Not long after that, Derek finally brought up the topic himself. One evening while we were eating dinner, he suddenly said, Monica, it's been a while since you and Ava visited your parents, hasn't it? I looked up at him. Why? I was just thinking. Maybe this weekend we should go see them. Patricia immediately joined in. That's right. Your parents probably miss Ava too. I almost laughed. Not long ago, Patricia couldn't stand hearing me mention my parents. Now she was encouraging me to visit them. The change was almost amusing. Maybe, I replied calmly. We'll see, Derek continued. No, really, we should go. Family is important. I looked at him and finally understood. He was getting impatient. The money from my father's land was all he could think about. That was why he suddenly cared so much about family. That was why he wanted to visit my parents. He wasn't worried about them. He was worried about the money. Okay, I replied. We can go this weekend. Derek immediately smiled. Good. I lowered my head and continued eating. Across the table, Patricia looked satisfied. Neither of them realized that I already knew everything. They thought they were leading me exactly where they wanted me to go. They thought I still believed every lie. They thought they were the hunters. But they had no idea that I was already setting the trap. Derek thought he was the one fishing, but he had no idea he was the fish. The weekend trip happened exactly as planned. Derek drove Ava and me to my parents' house. Ava was excited to go somewhere new. Everything she saw made her curious. My parents lived only about an hour away. The moment they saw us arrive, they rushed outside to greet their granddaughter. They were so happy that they even slaughtered a chicken to prepare a meal for us. Derek also acted very affectionate toward me, probably so my parents would trust him even more. After lunch, I took Ava inside to nap with my mother while my father and Derek rested in the living room. While lying there, I vaguely heard Derek bring up the subject of land. I quietly listened. Dad, I heard the land at the north end of the village used to be farmland, but now they're converting it? Yeah, I heard they're planning to build an industrial park there, so they're clearing the area. The compensation must be pretty high, right? It's all right. If someone owned land there, they must be getting a lot of money now. Derek deliberately steered the conversation toward compensation money, trying to remind my father about the land payout. Unfortunately for him, before coming here, I had already called my parents and asked them not to mention the compensation money under any circumstances. At first, they didn't understand and asked me why I wanted them to keep it secret. My father immediately sensed that something was wrong. But how could I admit that my husband had cheated on me and was trying to take my parents' money before divorcing me once I was no longer useful? So I made up an excuse and told them it wasn't the right time yet. When Derek brought up the subject, my father simply answered vaguely and then pretended to fall asleep. Derek failed to get the information he wanted. He looked irritated but couldn't do anything about it. That evening after dinner, he tried again. This time he was more direct. Dad, I've been thinking about opening a business. Working a regular job isn't enough anymore. My father nodded. If you want to improve yourself, that's a good thing. Yeah, but I don't have enough startup money. If you and Mom have some savings, maybe you could lend me some. I'll pay you back after the business is stable. My father thought for a moment. Your mother and I only have our land and a small convenience store. We barely get by. We spent everything raising Monica and her younger sister. We don't have any extra money. Derek hesitated before continuing. I heard you have land that's about to be cleared for the industrial project. Don't listen to rumors, my father interrupted immediately. That piece of land is only on the edge of the project area. It won't bring much money. There's no reason to pay attention to it. Derek wanted to continue, but my father said he was tired and went inside to sleep. Darius was left sitting there alone. I was sitting near the window and heard everything. I couldn't help laughing to myself. He had spent the entire day digging for information and still learned nothing. On the drive home, Derek's face was dark the entire time. He barely said a word. I didn't want to talk to him either. I just focused on playing with Ava. After that day, I knew I couldn't keep asking Derek for money anymore. But that was fine. I had already saved a decent amount for my plans. I hired a private investigator to look into all of Derek's finances. I also asked for information about his mistress. The results came back quickly. Money really does make a difference. The investigator told me that Derek had a savings account under his own name. He had opened it about 2 years ago, not long after we got married. Every month, he deposited around $1,000 into it. The account was now worth nearly $20,000. So from the very beginning, he had never been honest with me. I couldn't understand how a man with an average salary could put that much money away every month. The rest of the report answered that question. Besides the savings account, Derek also had another source of income. He owned part of a Chinese restaurant downtown. That restaurant was probably where the extra money came from. But where had he gotten the money to invest in it? Then I suddenly remembered something. Years ago, Derek told me one of his friends had been in an accident and desperately needed money. He asked to borrow my wedding gold. At the time, I handed it over without hesitation. To this day, he had never returned it. I had almost forgotten about that gold entirely. My husband had taken everything he could from me over the past 2 years, and even that wasn't enough. He cheated on me, and now he wanted my parents' compensation money too. I had been unbelievably foolish to trust him all this time, but the report wasn't finished. The information about Jasmine surprised me even more. She really was Derek's business partner, just as he claimed. She had also deliberately seduced him because she knew he desperately wanted a son. She used that desire to lure him into an affair. However, her real target was Derek's money. Besides Derek, she was involved with several other men. As for the baby she claimed was his, only God knew who the father really was. I couldn't help laughing when I read that. My calculating husband had spent all this time being manipulated by a woman even more calculating than he was. It seemed karma really did exist. That also made Jasmine much easier to deal with. That day I went home and wrote out the divorce papers in advance, waiting for Derek to return. Derek had no idea what was happening. He came home as usual and even happily went into the kitchen to cook dinner for me. I didn't disappoint him. I ate the meal with a good appetite. After dinner, I said to my in-laws, "Mom, Dad, I have something important to say." They looked at me in confusion. Derek also looked at me, not understanding what was going on. Once everyone was gathered, I placed the divorce papers in front of them and clearly announced, "Derek and I are getting divorced." The first person to jump up was Patricia. "What did you just say? Who gave you the right to do that? I'm an adult. If I can get married, I can get divorced. As long as the law allows it, that's enough." Derek stared at me in shock. "Monica, what are you talking about? Things have been good between us. I've changed. Can't you see that?" I laughed coldly. "Oh, I've seen your change. But can you honestly tell me whether that change came from regret or from another purpose?" Derek's face immediately changed. "What? What do you mean?" This time I didn't hide anything. "You don't regret anything. You're still seeing your mistress. The reason you've been treating me so well is because of my parents' land compensation money. Isn't that right?" Derek couldn't deny it. "Monica, I sneered. "I've already signed the divorce papers. Sign them. Tomorrow I'll file them and we'll settle everything in court." Hearing that, Derek suddenly laughed. "You should remember something. We don't have any joint property. If you divorce me, you'll leave with nothing." This time it was my turn to laugh. "Are you sure? Do you really think I don't know about your hidden assets? Everything you built came from my sacrifices and my hard work. You're not going to keep it all for yourself." Derek's face went pale. He clearly had no idea how much I had prepared for this day. Suddenly he shouted, "You think divorcing me will be that easy? I did everything to win your trust because of that money. There's no way I'm letting you divorce me so easily." Then he grabbed the divorce papers and tore them into pieces. I wasn't bothered at all. "You can tear up as many copies as you want. It doesn't matter. I'm only informing you and your parents. Divorce doesn't require your permission." I turned and walked upstairs. Behind me, I heard the sound of Derek punching the wall. That night, I locked the bedroom door and went to sleep. A little while later, Derek came upstairs and found the door locked. He banged loudly on the door. "Monica, open the door." "I'm not opening it. I don't want to sleep in the same room as you anymore. There are plenty of rooms in this house. Sleep wherever you want. Are you opening this door or not?" I didn't answer. I turned over and gently patted Ava back to sleep. Derek continued shouting outside the door, but after a while he realized I wasn't going to open it and eventually left. That night, I slept very well. Maybe freedom really was the best feeling in the world. The next morning, I woke up later than usual. After washing up, I started packing my things. I still didn't know where I would go, but I knew I had to leave this house first. I had spent 2 years in this house. When I first arrived, I had been full of excitement. Now I was just as eager to leave. After I finished packing, I woke Ava up, helped her wash up, and got her dressed. Then I picked her up, grabbed my suitcase, and headed downstairs. My father-in-law was already gone. Patricia was sitting outside on the porch fanning herself. The moment she saw me carrying Ava and dragging a suitcase behind me, she looked shocked. "Where are you going with all those things? And where are you taking Ava?" "I'm going back to my parents' house." I've already made everything clear between Derek and me. At this point, it's only a matter of time. Whether I leave now or later doesn't make much difference. Patricia immediately panicked and tried to stop me. You can't leave! Derek! Wake up! Monica is taking the child and leaving. Hearing Patricia scream, Derek seemed to wake up suddenly. A few seconds later, I heard hurried footsteps coming from the spare room. The moment he saw me carrying Ava and the suitcase, he understood everything. He immediately rushed over and stood in front of us with Patricia. Where are you going? We haven't finished talking about this. I tried to pull away. We already finished talking yesterday. You're pretending not to understand. No, we haven't finished. You can't leave. As he spoke, he reached for Ava and tried to pull her from my arms. She immediately burst into tears. My heart ached hearing her cry. Give Ava back to me. Didn't your family always complain that she was a girl? Didn't your family want a grandson? Then let me take my daughter and leave. When we go to court, custody will belong to me anyway. I haven't agreed to a divorce, so there won't be any court. You're not taking Ava anywhere. And you're not leaving either. We haven't settled this. I was furious. It's over. You already have another woman. Why do you keep making things harder for me and my daughter? This time, Derek stopped pretending. You want a divorce? Fine. Tell your father to transfer that land compensation money to me, and then you can go wherever you want. I laughed coldly. So this was what he wanted all along. Then you'll never get a single dollar from me. I immediately lunged forward, trying to take Ava back completely into my arms. Ava cried even harder, but Derek refused to let go. The two of us struggled right there on the front steps. In the middle of the struggle, I lost my balance. My foot slipped. I fell backward and slammed my head against the ground. A sharp pain exploded through my skull. My vision blurred instantly. My ears started ringing. Before I lost consciousness, I vaguely heard Patricia screaming, "Blood! Oh my God, there's blood!" Mixed with her voice was the heartbreaking sound of my daughter crying. Then a wave of darkness rushed over me, and I couldn't fight it anymore. I lost consciousness. I had a dream, a strange dream. In the dream, I found myself back in high school. I saw myself wearing a school uniform and walking to class. I saw Tasha and me sitting at the same desk. Behind us was a boy wearing glasses. Every now and then, I would catch him secretly looking at me, but I could never clearly see his face. Then the dream shifted. I was in college. The boy with glasses was still secretly following me to school, but we were no longer in the same class. He would stand outside my classroom, look at me for a while, and then quietly leave. The scene changed again. I graduated from college and met Derek, the man who would become my husband. Memories of our time together flashed before me. Then I saw the day Ava was born. I saw myself catching Derek with another woman at that coffee lounge. Finally, I saw the moment I struggled with Derek and Patricia and fell from the front steps. I suddenly woke from the dream, but I couldn't open my eyes. I tried with all my strength, but my eyelids refused to move. I heard someone enter the room. I desperately tried to move, to let them know I was awake, but my body no longer obeyed me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move a single muscle. My eyes stayed shut. Everything around me was darkness. I felt trapped inside my own body. I heard voices nearby. I listened carefully. A strange man's voice said, "Your wife's condition is stable for now. There's no immediate danger to her life. However, whether she wakes up or not depends entirely on her own will. I'm sorry, but that's all we can do." Then I heard Derek's voice. I recognized it immediately. How could I ever forget the voice of the husband who betrayed me and helped put me in this condition? He repeatedly thanked the doctor. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you for saving my wife's life. As for whether she wakes up, I understand that's up to her now." A few moments later, I heard footsteps leaving the room. As soon as the door closed, Derek came closer to me and spoke quietly. "Monica, you've done well. You shouldn't die right now. If you die, how am I supposed to get my share of that land money? But you can't really live either, because you would never give me a cent. So being in a coma is perfect. Thank you very much." Then Derek laughed. Hearing that laugh made me want to jump up and hit him, but my useless body wouldn't give me that chance. Suddenly the door opened again and hurried footsteps entered. Then I heard my mother's voice. "My daughter. Monica, how did this happen to you?" Even without seeing her, I knew it was my mother. I hated myself for not being able to sit up, hug her, and tell her that the man responsible for this was my worthless husband. Derek immediately changed his tone. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry." When I came outside, Monica was already lying there. I rushed her to the hospital, but the doctors could only do this much. My father nearly collapsed when he heard that. My mother quickly supported him. "Please stay strong. She wouldn't want to see you like this." My father struggled to hold himself together. I wanted nothing more than to sit up and expose the hypocrite standing beside me. I couldn't understand how I had once been so blind that I ignored my parents and insisted on marrying him. I regretted marrying Derek more than anything, but there was nothing I could do now. I had become a vegetable. After my parents cried for a while, Derek claimed I needed rest and persuaded them to leave. I was devastated. At my age, I still hadn't done anything meaningful for my parents, yet they had to witness this pain because of me. Eventually, the room became quiet again. I lay there thinking about everything that had happened, the painful years in my husband's house, the divorce papers that had never been filed. Then I thought about Ava. Who would take care of her now? Would her father care for her because she was his daughter, or would he ignore her because she was a girl and because money mattered more to him? I worried constantly about my daughter, but trapped inside this helpless body, there was nothing I could do. Derek hired a caregiver to look after me. In front of him, she acted kind and professional. The moment he left, she cursed me nonstop. She called me useless and said people like me should just die instead of forcing others to care for them. I laughed silently to myself. If dying were that easy, I wouldn't still be here. In my condition, I couldn't even move. How could I possibly kill myself? By the third day, Derek was visiting once a day. My parents wanted to stay with me all the time, but Derek kept making excuses about how I needed rest and how he didn't want them exhausting themselves. Tasha came too, but Derek used the same excuses to keep her visits short. There was only one person who kept coming. He always waited until the caregiver was gone before entering. He would massage my arms and legs and say it was to prevent my muscles from wasting away. He carried a faint scent of peppermint. He told me little stories every day. Before leaving, he always reminded me, "Wake up soon. You still have a lot of things left to do." Little by little, he became the person I looked forward to most each day. I didn't know how much time passed. Then one day a violent storm arrived. Thunder shook the sky. The caregiver forgot to close the window, and rain blew into the room. I felt freezing cold. I shivered in both body and spirit. Soon after, I developed a fever. In my delirium, the old dreams returned. High school, college, and finally, I saw the face of the boy with glasses, clearly, for the first time. But just as I recognized him, he slowly walked away from me. I tried to run after him, but no matter how hard I ran, I couldn't catch him. Then I tripped on a step and fell. I suddenly woke up. The sight before me left me stunned. White walls, white lights, everything was white. I looked around in disbelief. This wasn't a dream. The window beside my bed, the room I had imagined thousands of times while trapped inside my mind, was finally right in front of me. I wanted to call someone, but only a weak movement escaped my lips. Then I realized I had probably been unconscious for too long. My body no longer worked properly. Just then, the door opened. I immediately closed my eyes. It was the caregiver. As usual, she complained and insulted me while doing her work. After thinking about it carefully, I made a decision. I would continue pretending to be unconscious. I would secretly train my body and recover. I wanted to give my parents a surprise, and I wanted to give my worthless husband a surprise too. There was one more reason. I wanted to find out who the man with the peppermint scent really was. That day, as always, after the caregiver left, the man came to visit. He massaged my arms and legs and told me stories. I wanted to open my eyes and see who he was, but he always stayed too close. If I opened them, he would know immediately. So I waited. By the time he left, all I could see was a familiar-looking silhouette walking away. The scent of peppermint lingered in the air. After everyone left, I began training my body in secret. I hoped that one day I would stand in front of my parents, point directly at my worthless husband, and expose every terrible thing he had done. Because of that hope, I practiced every day. One day, Derek came again. He said, "Monica, do you know something? I told your parents that your treatment here is too expensive and that I can't afford it anymore. And do you know what happened? They finally told me about the compensation money. They're going to give half of it to us. Do you know how much money it is? $32 million. Derek laughed excitedly before continuing. "It's a shame you won't wake up to spend it. That's okay. I'll spend it for you. Once I transfer all that money into my name, you won't be my wife anymore." Hearing those disgusting words from the man who had once shared my bed made me want to jump up and hit him. But I knew this wasn't the right moment. I had only just regained limited movement. Derek was close to getting exactly what he wanted. If he found out I was awake and recovering, I was afraid he would try to hurt me again. My only chance would be tomorrow, when my parents arrived and announced everything. Derek continued talking to himself for a while before happily leaving. I was left alone in the room again. The man with the peppermint scent hadn't come that day. I waited all day and still didn't see him. For the first time, I felt disappointed. He had never missed a day before, no matter how late it was. I suddenly realized that somewhere along the way, I had fallen in love with him. The next morning, Derek arrived early. He ordered the caregiver to clean me up carefully. Not long afterward, I heard many footsteps entering the room. "Mom, Dad, you're here," Derek said politely. "I'm just wiping Monica's hands and feet." "Go ahead and finish," my father replied. Derek pretended to gently care for me, as if he were a devoted husband. He clearly wanted my parents to see how dedicated he had been. After he finished, my father walked over and held my hand. "Monica, today I'm transferring the compensation money to you and Derek. It's a shame you aren't awake to see it. Derek will receive it on your behalf. Please wake up soon." Derek immediately spoke up. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll take good care of Monica and wait for her to recover. Your mother and I won't be around forever. We're counting on you. I understand." At that moment, I knew it was time. I opened my eyes and squeezed my father's hand. "Dad, you don't need to do that. I don't need him to take care of me." My father, my mother, and everyone else in the room froze in shock. My mother rushed toward me. "Monica, you're awake? You're really awake?" Tears rolled down my face. "Yes, Mom, I'm awake." My mother hugged me and cried. My father squeezed my hand tightly. I saw tears shining in his eyes. Derek recovered from his shock and quickly forced a smile onto his face. "Monica, you're awake. You're really awake." I ignored him. After calming down, I looked at my parents and said, "Mom, Dad, I have something to tell you." "What is it?" my father asked. Derek immediately became nervous. "And welcome. You're still recovering. We can talk later." "No, I need to say it now." Seeing how serious I was, my parents nodded. I took a deep breath and pointed directly at Derek. "Do you know why I fell?" He pushed me. My parents stared at Derek in disbelief. "What are you talking about, Monica?" "I'm not mistaken. He cheated on me. He refused to let me divorce him because he wanted your compensation money. I gathered evidence and hired a lawyer. I was trying to leave when he stopped me. During the struggle, he caused me to fall." My parents turned toward the son-in-law they had trusted completely. "Is that true?" Derek couldn't answer. He just stood there, stammering. I continued, "Even while I was unconscious, I heard everything. He came here every day, but not because he cared about me. He was watching me. The caregiver he hired insulted me every day and wished I would die." My father looked at Derek and said coldly, "You won't receive a single dollar from me." Then he turned toward the attorney standing nearby. "The transfer is canceled. Help my daughter finish the divorce instead." The attorney nodded and stepped outside. The moment Derek realized the money was gone, he lost control. He pointed at me and screamed, "This is all your fault. Why do you always ruin everything at the last moment? Why couldn't you just die?" Then he grabbed a fruit knife from a nearby table and pressed it against my neck. I had recovered somewhat, but I was still far too weak to fight him. He dragged me off the bed and across the floor. At that moment, only my parents, Derek and I, remained in the room. My parents panicked. "Derek? Put the knife down. There's nothing left to talk about," he shouted. "I have to kill her." My mother began begging him, "Please, don't hurt my daughter. Please." But Derek had completely lost his mind. He dragged me toward the door. "Nobody is leaving this room." Just then, the door suddenly opened. Someone entered. Derek swung the knife toward the newcomer, but the man reacted faster. He blocked the attack and kicked Derek so hard that he dropped the knife and released me. With nowhere left to run, Derek climbed out through the window and fled. By then, I was completely exhausted. My vision blurred. Before I lost consciousness again, I smelled that familiar peppermint scent. When I woke up after another long sleep, my parents were sitting beside my bed. The moment they saw my eyes open, they rushed over. "Are you okay? Does anything hurt? Do you need a doctor?" But I felt better than I had in years. I smiled. "No, as long as you're here, I'm fine." We laughed and talked together. It felt like I hadn't experienced the warmth of a real family in a very long time. A little later, Tasha arrived with someone else. I immediately recognized him. It was Nathan, the attorney handling my divorce. Tasha smiled and asked, "You're awake. Do you recognize him?" "Of course. He's Nathan." Tasha laughed. "That's all?" I tried to remember if I was missing something. Then a faint scent of peppermint drifted through the room. Derek was later charged with attempted murder and other crimes. He was arrested quickly. By the time the trial took place, I had recovered enough to attend. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. All of his assets were placed in Ava's name. Because she was still a child, I would manage them until she became an adult. As officers led Derek away, I told him the truth. The little boy Jasmine gave birth to was never his son. Derek nearly lost his mind when he heard it. Outside the courthouse, Nathan was waiting for me. Not as my attorney, but as the man I loved. It turned out Nathan was the boy with glasses who had secretly liked me all through high school and college. When I fell in love with Derek and got married, he stopped watching from a distance. But when he learned I was trapped in a terrible marriage, he came back to help me. During the time I was in the hospital, the man with the peppermint scent who visited me every day had been Nathan. Through his sincerity, he made me fall in love with him even while I was trapped inside a motionless body. Warm sunlight stretched across a green field. A white and lavender wedding venue decorated with roses lined the path ahead. Soft music played in the background. Once again, my father held my hand and walked me forward. This time, Ava walked beside us, proudly scattering flower petals. At the end of the aisle stood Nathan, wearing a black suit with a red rose pinned to his chest. He smiled as he watched me approach. Soon my father would place my hand into Nathan's. This time, I truly believed it would be the last love of my life.